Today is SugaBear's Community Corner. This is where we highlight people in and of the community, giving back to the community so you can have information about where they are, so on and so forth. Today's special guest is Micah Smith. She is the president of the Colorado Association of Black Journalists, which is the local chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, the world's largest organization of journalists of color. Excuse me. Good morning, Micah.
Good morning, SugaBear.
It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. I know you're a busy person, so thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about who you are, the people who may not know who you are, because you are on the news here, correct?
That is correct. Currently, I work for Denver 7, the ABC affiliate here in town. I am the 5 p.m. anchor, and I'm also the social equity reporter. And so social equity basically means every day that I report, I tell a story on an underserved community, and I highlight what's going on there, not just the bad, but the good and the celebrations and the beautiful things.
I love that. That's awesome. Now, tell us a little bit how you got to become president of the CABJ.
When I got here to Denver about 5 years ago, which is crazy to say, I can't believe it's been 5
It's been
years.
5 years, yeah.
I really felt the need to have a community of journalists, black journalists in particular, and I knew that CABJ had once been a really strong chapter of NABJ, but at that time, it just wasn't an active chapter.
Got it.
And so I started thinking, what can I do as somebody who had just come from Charlotte with a very active chapter to try to reactivate and reinvigorate this space that was so needed at the time. So I started talking to other journalists in town who were also interested in trying to reactivate the chapter. It was about a 1.5 to 2 year journey, but we finally got it back up and
Took some
running.
time. Now, on a national level, is it in every state?
It is not.
Okay. Is that like the goal or like eventually?
The goal, I shouldn't say it's not. There's definitely been a presence in
Got it.
almost every state, but
Okay.
there's not necessarily an active chapter in every state at this moment in time.
Got it. Okay. And so for anyone out there listening, the CABJ encourages and supports the achievement of black media professionals who endeavor to accurately, I love this word, document stories of the African diaspora. Can you explain that a little bit, go a little bit deeper?
Absolutely. I think for a long time, the news had this reputation, and in some ways it still does, that we only show up when things are bad. We only show up on your worst day. We only show up to highlight the bad things happening in your neighborhood. And a part of that is because of who's showing up. Who's showing up is not representative of the community. Who's showing up is the person that does not look like you, has never seen you a day in their life. So we want to be the difference makers. We want to be the ones who come in and say, hey, I'm black too. Hey, I live around the corner. I know I'm covering the shooting, but I live around the corner.
Right.
I go to your church. We go to the same King Supers. Come on now. It's a story I have to tell, but know that I'm not doing it from a standpoint of trying to bring down the community or highlight the bad. I'm doing it from a standpoint of this is information that needs to be shown to the community, and I am of your community.
And I'm of the community. That's why we do this. SugaBear's Community Corner, in and of the community, giving back. So as far as being a black journalist and then being hired at some of these companies and whatnot, how incumbent is it upon some of these companies to make sure the representation is there?
It's very important. I'm going to tell you something, though, SugaBear. I'm going to keep it real.
Okay.
There's a little bit of diversity fatigue going on right now. After George Floyd, all these companies came out with these diversity statements. They were talking about inclusion and equity. They were looking at their metrics. How many black and brown journalists do we have on our payroll? And they really were trying to boost those numbers. But after those hiring processes were in place, and after they looked around and saw a few black and brown faces, they said, the work is done, right? The work is never done.
Never.
And so now it's incumbent upon every company to take a real internal look and ask themselves, was this about lasting change or was this about seizing the moment?
Got it. And for CABJ to, put black, representation in place, what's your active part in doing that, and how do you become a part of that so that you feel like you're a part of the change in the process?
I think when black journalists come here, especially from southern states, because the demographic is a lot different and community looks different, right? I think they look around and go, where are we? SugaBear, you and I talked about this a little bit.
Yes.
And so CABJ comes in to say, We are here. And yes, while you may be in your workplace and you may be the only one or one of few, we are a space where you can not only network and communicate with other Black journalists, but we can socialize, we can have a good time, we can talk about the challenges that we're each individually having in our newsroom and collectively come together and try to address some of those issues.
Creatives, podcasters, writers, broadcast news professionals, so on and so forth. It's a creative space where you all can commune, right? And do you have meetings and whatnot? How does that work?
Absolutely. So even though journalist is in our name, I think we have a more broad definition of what it means to be a journalist. And so it's anybody who is creating content. So we welcome podcasters, we welcome YouTubers, we welcome public relations and media relations professionals, because so many of people in those industries and those professions were previously journalists. And so working together, we can really share our skill sets, share tools that we're using, and learn from one another. We do meet regularly once a month. We meet on the third Saturday of every month. For a long time, we were meeting at the Rocky Mountain Public Media Building. But members came to me and said, hey, we want to be in community. Is there a way that we can meet in spaces where we're actually, in community? And so now every quarter we rotate to a different Black-owned business.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we hold our meetings there, and we try to patronize those businesses as well.
I love that. Is this something that you always wanted to do? Tell us a little bit of background story about, did you always wanted to be in media or in front of the camera?
I can't say always, but I know since I was at least 12 or 13 years old. In middle school, I was actually in a newspaper class.
Oh, nice. Okay.
From St. Louis, got to shout that out.
Shout
always.
out to Lou.
Love
shout
Denver, but shout out to the Lou. And so I had a newspaper class, and I really enjoyed it. And it was funny because one day my newspaper teacher said to me, you are not the best newspaper writer. That really shrunk me. But he said, you have such a huge personality, and I see the journalist in you. Why don't you try our TV class? So I switched into the TV class. And so from about 13, 14 years old, I was in TV. And I knew from there I wanted to major in journalism and I wanted to go into broadcast. So I won't say always, but it's been a really long time.
Interesting. Growing up, when I went to college, I went to Oregon State. I thought I wanted to go into broadcasting, but then they took the broadcast program away. But I was a camera person, and I learned behind the scenes, but it was so interesting. So for any parent out there that may have a young, adult or young teenager or whatever that may be interested in that, what's some advice that you would give them?
I would just say indulge your kids' dreams. I know growing up, especially when I went to Mizzou, University of Missouri, Columbia, and I was told, even while I was in the program, you're not going to make a lot of money. Journalism is facing budget cuts. You should probably go major in business where you can make some money. And then, that really discouraged me. But as I got into the business, I realized you can make a living at anything that you're passionate about. And so I just encourage every parent to really listen to your kids, try to find a way that you can kind of indulge their passions and know that their passions may change because they're kids, and that's okay. But don't turn it off completely just because it's a creative field and there's sometimes not a definitive path forward.
Got it. Okay. And can you explain some of the importance of having the moral support of each other? Like, have you gotten some feedback from some of the other, creatives and journalists that are in this group of what it means to them to be able to have this?
Absolutely. I will say I've talked to so many journalists who are a part of CABJ who talk to me about feeling so isolated, feeling tokenized, feeling unheard, feeling like every Black story is thrown their way because they're Black, even though, they want to report on the economy. They're a business economics reporter or business insider reporter, but it's a Black story gets thrown their way because they're Black. So we do talk about a lot of those experiences, but we also talk about ways to help each other. I have a lot of members of CABJ who are freelancers. They're not in a traditional newsroom. They're not at a traditional media outlet. And they've done some incredible work. And so they've asked, hey, how do you submit for awards? How do you make your work be considered for an Emmy?
Love it.
Or how can your work be considered for an Edward R. Murrow, a really prestigious award in journalism? And so I've been able to lend my knowledge from being in a traditional newsroom to say, hey, this is exactly how you do that. Why don't we go ahead and set up a workshop for people who have no clue where to start and start to get their work recognized?
I love that. And then you used the word tokenized. I like that. For anyone on the outside looking in, I know I've been in different cities and I've lived there, and you see someone of color on air and you're like, oh, it feels like quote unquote, that they're meeting a quota or that they're filling a space because we have to have some representation, Latino, whatever it may be. What do you say to that? Because for us on the outside looking in, it looks like sometimes it can't be genuine, or it's just not completely genuine.
I think sometimes I will show grace. Sometimes it's unintentional, but
Of course.
sometimes it's most definitely by design because these systems were not necessarily built for us.
There you
We've
go.
said that time and time again.
Uh-huh.
But I do think that we have to start holding our companies and our industry accountable and start to call out that elephant in the room.
I love that.
And I think that we can begin to break down those walls and rebuild those systems once we go ahead and call out exactly what's happening. Hey, I feel like I'm being tokenized. You can say that. I know it's uncomfortable and it could lead to an uncomfortable conversation, but at least we've addressed the elephant in the room and no one can say, you never said anything. I didn't know you felt that way. Well, we got to start making sure everybody knows how we feel.
That's the part, being vocal about it, right? Making sure you say something. Okay, we're going to play a couple songs, come back. There's some events that are happening that you're going to speak of. If you're just tuning in, Micah Smith is here. She is the president of the Colorado Association of Black Journalists, CABJ, local chapter of National, which is a local chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. It says founded in 1987, huh? That's when it started.
Absolutely. So CABJ started about 10 years after the National Association of Black Journalists. And for those of you wondering about the Black community here in Colorado, CABJ was one of the first NABJ chapters outside of Philadelphia, outside of Washington, D.C. And we actually have a few founders of the National Association of Black Journalists who live right here in
Clap it up
Denver.
for that. Nice.
Sandra Dillard, I'm shouting you out. And so it's been around for a long time. It's definitely grown and gotten a lot more recognition over the past, I would say, 20 or so years.
That's a beautiful thing. Okay, now let's talk about some of the events that you guys have coming up. You mentioned this a little bit earlier off the air. What exactly do you have coming up in April and March, I believe?
So we are really focused on making sure that not only we have a space for current journalists, but we also have a space for the next generation of journalists who are interested or coming up right now. And so we have a scholarship fundraiser and award ceremony that's happening on March 2nd. That's a Saturday. It's happening at Cableland, the official residence of the mayor of Denver. We do have tickets on sale for that event right now. You can go to cabj5280.org. And we are really excited. It's going to be a fun time. I have a lot of surprises planned for all of our guests, but we're going to be showing recognition not just to other journalists, but to community organizations and community leaders that are doing everything they can to better our community. So I'm really excited to give them the recognition that they deserve and need. And then we'll also be, again, raising funds for this next generation of journalists coming up. We also have another event coming up April 13th. That's our National Association of Black Journalists Region 4 Conference.
Nice.
We were chosen this year as the city to be the host, and I'm really excited.
Wow.
We'll be welcoming journalists from Seattle, from Los Angeles, from Phoenix, Arizona, from San Diego, from the Bay Area. So really the western half of the United States, we are Region 4. They will all be coming to Denver to try to learn and grow together as journalists, but everyone is welcome. Anybody who's interested in media, journalism, Google's going to come out and teach a session.
That's the part.
We've got some really good programming happening, and that will be on the Auraria campus.
Very cool. I think I'm going to know some journalists from Arizona. There's not very many of them out there, but I think I know a few of them that has been around for a long time as well. One last thing, on a personal note, what did you think of the Usher performance as a journalist?
I absolutely love the Usher performance. It felt a little rushed to me, but it was also a good reminder that Usher has hits on hits on hits.
Man, he didn't even touch them all, right?
He didn't even touch them all, and so he wanted to cram them all in. I also think keeping them short and tight was good promotion for this tour he's got coming up.
The tour, and they're coming here, too, which is awesome.
Coming here 2 nights.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was a trip down memory lane. I could have used a little bit more. But hey, I think it was good promotion for his tour.
I mean, would you rank it top 5? Prince was number 1. Prince or Beyonce,
boy.
right? Would top 5?
I think it would have to at least be top 10.
Top 10 easy.
I'm trying to go through my head of, all the performances. It's definitely top 10. I'm not ready to say if it's top 5, but that'll be homework for me, SugaBear. Next time I see you,
Then we can talk
I'll
about
let you know.
This is a beautiful thing. Okay, is there a website also where they can get information?
Absolutely. That is our CABJ website. So it's CABJ5280.org. We have all of our information there, tickets for all the events I mentioned, and you can learn more about everybody on our executive board.
I love that. Yeah, and there's beautiful pictures up there on the website, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing. I think this is so important. Coming in here during Black History Month, this is history, and what you're doing, you're serving this community. So thank you for that service. It means a lot to me personally, and I know to the people who are listening right now.
Thank you for welcoming me on your platform, SugaBear, because I know this really is a sacred space, and you don't choose people lightly to be guests. And so I'm so honored to be here, so grateful to be here, and thank you for all that you're doing for community.
I appreciate you saying that.